In my opinion, it is a fairly widespread morality in the climate of southern laxity and victimhood in which I found myself immersed in spite of myself, above all because my father acquired this air of continuous idle complaining and bad mood especially at home, or with whom, like his mother, had to he had to conquer with childishness and whining. He was always a man who complained about anything, even if a positive event happened to him. He immediately turned him for the worst, and tried to show others that not only had he not benefited from it, but he had come out even more poor, sick, and worthy of compassion than before. It is easy to think how such a person soon became hateful to his own wife, the only one who loved him, spoiled him, and listened to all his whining woes as usual. Always my paternal grandmother. Obviously from her atavistic instinct of southern women to spoil and pamper the only male child beyond all decency, all the paranoia and hypochondria crisis that one day, I am not sure, will end up leading my parent to a desperate death, prey to uncontrollable um, terrors and the ghosts of imaginary persecutors. And then and then he said, cry, cry all the time. Life deserves nothing else, and whoever sees you laughing and being happy will sooner or later crush you with their envy. This is one of the cornerstones of my father's philosophy of life. He never went so far as to teach me explicitly, also because he never had any interest in teaching me anything. But I could well deduce it with the instinct to emulate and observe that it is almost innate in every child. Did I then learn to never smile, or to always sit quietly in a corner, also thanks to my father? I cannot say that my inner suffering for all the years to follow started only from these, but the behavioral anomaly of the father was undoubtedly one of the triggers. This is enough for the first sketch of the curious, at times tragicomic figure of a man who will find more space in the chapters that follow. Let's try talking about another aspect of my life as a child. Let's just say the blind hatred of my mother towards me. There are mothers who kill, violent mothers who hide the corpse of their child after very small, very young, and then pretend to live the day as if nothing had ever happened. The facts of crime have by now accustomed us to everything. There are mothers who, however, and thank goodness this would happen in most of these tragic cases of violence, manage to stop in time and to block their hand, maybe even a second before a potentially fatal gesture. This is what I have always told myself that happened to an act of my mother, an act of reckless brutality against nature and against all human feelings, unmentionable and inconceivable on the part of a mother. It is plausible that in less barbaric times only a mother could have the courage to kill a defenseless child. Nature has this shocking characteristic, capable of leaving even the most critical philosopher bewildered. It turns against itself, destroys itself when it decides that it has reached the non-result of its own mysterious, tragic being. A mother who kills first lashes out, essentially against her own person, by attacking her own little one, her own child. She first chokes her life, and who knows, maybe she would like to cancel it together with the fruit that she herself has given birth to. My mother, I must have been about 6 or 7 years old, tried to break my neck one morning while she was washing me on the table in the act of taking off my diaper. I don't remember if I had any tantrums or if I was complaining about something, but she suddenly had a rash of anger, such that never before I would have been able to imagine it painted on her face. Like a friend or a faint racket demon, she pounced over my head and tried to pin it down deeper and deeper into my chest. I screamed, twisted, and finally the despair of my screams of pain broke like a spell. She stopped, took my face in her hands, and burst into tears. I myself, for days, months, and maybe even years, kept telling myself that I had been thinking wrong, that it was just an accident, that it was probably just a muscle contracture due to a cold, and that my mother had only touched me to unleash that immense, excruciating suffering. She had only touched me just like that, as any child should be in a hug. Of course, she immediately took me to a doctor, to whom she said I had fallen from my chair. The version that she would have reserved for me, I have already written that. Basically, it was all my fault. Must have made some sudden movements, and she was not at fault. I have as it were erased that episode from my mind throughout my adolescence and youth. It came back to my memory in all its disarming weirdness only a little over a year ago, and I don't hide that I was one of the reasons why, perhaps prematurely, perhaps disastrously, given the impact it will have on my family, I decided to put my hand to this sort of reasoned autobiography. autobiography. The birth of my brother, Matteo. Around that time my life was turned upside down by the birth of a new baby brother. I got the news, as if by chance, from my father, who announced to me and my brother that in a few and my older brother that in a few months we would have company. Um, my dad never loved fuss, but I began to wait for that little child like an alien or a particular pet puppy. When returning from my grandmother's house, I was introduced to Matteo, tiny, ruddy, and with little fingers like spider paws. I remember being almost afraid to touch him. While my brother Pietro literally threw himself on him every time my mother approached him to make him kiss and hug him. I never had the courage to even touch him. I had a mixture of fear and shame in approaching that new specimen of human being who had plunged as if out of nowhere in a domestic habitat that had already been stabilized for, for years. It wouldn't always be like that. When Matteo started to take his first steps, and he became a little more independent from my mother, I tried to talk to him, then to touch him, and finally to give him the first trembling hug. He let me do it every time, but it was evident that he neither understood anything about my awkward displays of affection, the first I had ever had in my life, and probably the last for any living thing as well, nor was he much inclined to do it. After all the pampering that he already received in abundance from family members and relatives far away. In any case, for all the years that our relationship as brothers lasted, I can say that I always had greater empathy with him than with any other member of my family. Moreover, Matteo has always possessed the gift of an innate goodness, a kind of kindness of ways and thoughts, that made him rather anomalous in my family. He was the last person to whom I spoke before the years of the great silence, in which desperate and now destroyed, I broke all relationships with all the rest of my other family. I have never felt judged by him, and although I was almost sure that Pietro could have an underlying rancor towards me, Matteo never showed the same kind of antipathy or prejudice toward the brother toward his older brother, a liar, complex, solitary, and taciturn brother, with which fate had forced him to share blood. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next video.